Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So here we are once again discussing the absolutely, in my opinion, unthinkable. Now, a couple of days ago, I came across the news that there is such a thing as school shooter talk, basically. Now, I'm calling it that. I really hope the community isn't as big as having a school shooter talk, but TikTok has a school shooter now going viral, gaining hundreds of thousands of followers because he's describing his experience as a school shooter, amongst other things. Let's just get into it. I'm just gonna say this is extremely heavily debated because, as we well know, obviously there is a community online of people who admire and look up to school shooters. I think we all have learned that the hard way via finding out about Columbiners, amongst other groups of people. So we have a community that glorifies it. We have a community of people who are in favor of forgiveness and believing that people deserve second chances, which is something I believe myself to an extent and under specific circumstances. It's not a rule that just applies to anyone. And then we have people who basically think that this person should rot in jail, period. So we have three groups of people with super extremely different opinions that differ enough to cause absolute fucking mayhem because of this content creator. A former school shooter is sharing his story on TikTok, but some feel he should stay silent. Your redemption arc after shooting up a school is to be moving in silence, not boasting about how you become a better person. John Romano, a school shooter who served time in prison, has been posting TikToks about his past. However, many believe his re-entry into society shouldn't be so public. Romano, who posts on TikTok as @JohnSeekingPeace, shot and injured a teacher at his high school, Columbia High School in upstate New York, when he was 16 years old in 2004. He was tackled and apprehended by the school's assistant principal and served a 17-year sentence in prison. Now Romano is posting on TikTok after being a part of the problem because he feels it's time for him to be a part of the solution, as explained in his TikTok bio. As of publication, Romano has almost 255,000 followers on TikTok. In a video where he tells his story, Romano recounts his mindset leading up to bringing a shotgun to his high school, the work he did in prison to focus on his mental health, and how he started speaking up about school shootings and gun violence after the Parkland shooting. After he was released from prison, he spoke with law enforcement and local schools about how to prevent school shootings. I'm not going to read all the quotes here because I am going to show you the TikToks that the quotes are taken from. And Romano has doubled down on his message when commenters have asked why he's chosen TikTok as his medium for spreading his message. I talk with people on here about the disturbed mindset that I had leading up to the shooting, Romano says in a video. I believe we can intervene with those who are in a dark path and help them get on a better, healthier path. He also said his goal is not redemption for what he's done, but to prevent more school shootings. But to some, his TikTok presence seems like a redemption arc. TikToker Alyssa Phobium posted about Romano's video concerning him being a victim of a knife attack by an unhoused person who called him the White Devil. Alyssa Phobium says that Romano should neither be on TikTok monetizing the storytelling of his crimes or seeking attention at all. This school shooter has been able to amass a following of over 250,000 people on an app made for children, she says in her TikTok. Your redemption arc after shooting up a school is to be moving in silence, not boasting about how you become a better person. Similarly, TikToker Jules Bonds called Romano's TikTok presence insidious, dystopian, and an example of white privilege. What's more, she says that Romano's videos show radicalized people who want to shoot up schools that there can be a light at the end of the tunnel for them through online fame. The article goes on and it quotes different people, but I really don't think it's necessary to read all of these. I will link it down below if you're interested in seeing what all these people have to say. The first video I'm going to show you is relatively long. I think it's about 5 minutes. I'm going to put it up without interruption so you can see everything because there's really no place where I can intervene as he tells the entirety of the story. Does that make sense? It's one of those things you have to see straight up and then after digest it and have a reaction. So if you've already seen it and you want to skip it, I will put a timestamp.
A lot of people know me for this, surviving a sword attack 7 months ago when I worked at a homeless shelter. But a lot of you might not know my full story and why I wanted to work at that homeless shelter helping people and why I'm such a big advocate for mental health. This is me at 16 years old, about to be sentenced to 20 years in prison. Because on February 9th, 2004, when I was just 16 years old, I did the unthinkable. I walked into my high school with a shotgun. Now, my intentions that day were not what we see too often with these tragedies on the news. I was not there to kill, but to be killed. And I could have stayed at home and ended my own life, and sometimes I still wish I had. But I was afraid. I was unable to pull the trigger on myself. And part of me also didn't want to die alone. I also didn't want to be forgotten. I wanted people to see me. I wanted them to see my suffering. Because I believed that I was alone in my suffering. I didn't know just how prevalent depression is and how too often mental illness is. So yeah, I wanted people to see me. And I also knew that I'd be harming people psychologically. I knew I'd be spreading the suffering that I felt like I had alone. But when I was in that school that day, I was not there to kill anybody. When I went into the hallway, there was a couple of students. One was right in front of me, and he ran for his life. I still see him every day. And I waited until he was gone. And I turned around a corner, and I seen two more students, a good 40 feet down the hall. So I fired off 2 rounds into the ceiling and scared them away. And I walked around for a while. Now, I had stepped into one classroom just to see people. Like I said, I was afraid of being alone. I wanted people to see me, to see the pain and the suffering that I was going through. But what I ended up seeing was their pain, their suffering. I saw the fear and the terror in their eyes. But I left that classroom and I walked back out into the hallway, and I was walking down. And after a while, the vice principal, who came to investigate the sounds that he heard, not knowing that they were shotgun blasts, he came up behind me and grabbed me. And he grabbed at the gun. And we started to struggle. And during the struggle, my finger was on the trigger and the gun went off. And I didn't know that there was a teacher coming up behind us to help the vice principal detain me. I didn't even know I had shot somebody. He was hit in the leg. And I didn't know about that until later on. But yeah, I shot somebody. So I went to prison and spent 17 years in there. And I did my best to turn my life around. And I did my best to work on my mental health. And I began to speak out when I saw these terrible tragedies happening. Because I knew that I had to be a part of the change that wasn't coming. And when I came home after doing 17 years, I began speaking with law enforcement and school administrators and letting them know about my story and letting them know about how I believe we can stop these tragedies from happening. And I began working at that homeless shelter because I wanted to help do some good for the community I once hurt. I can't take back what I've done. I can't make direct amends to the teacher that I injured that day or to the students who I traumatized that day. I can't do anything to help them. So what do? I try to do something good for others. And if you believe I deserve this, so be it. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I don't want people to forgive me, to think that I'm a good guy. I don't care about any of that. What I want is for change. What I want is for people to realize that if we take mental health more seriously, that is just one step of many that can make drastic changes around the board. Not only stopping these tragedies that we see too often, but also stopping the suicide that we see among adolescents and children, let alone full-grown adults, let alone our veterans who don't get taken care of. We need change. And if I can be a part of that, so be it. Because obviously, nothing has changed in the past 30 years for mental health. Nobody's really pushing for it in schools as much as it should be. We've seen students who have survived school shootings cry out for help time and time again. and lawmakers ignore them. So here I am, the bad guy, the one who walked into a school with a gun, telling you, you need to change things.
Now, as you guys might imagine, my personal empathy for school shooters runs below zero. Now, you guys know we've talked about this endlessly on this channel. Mental health, yes, I take that very seriously, but as we've also discussed, I do not accept mental health as an excuse. It can be part of the reason why you do things, but it does not mean that you get to do things without consequence, which obviously this man knows because he went to prison for 17 years. There are a couple of things here that for me read as inauthentic, and that's my problem with a lot of this person's content. Now, granted, I think most people will have an inherent bias against this man, which I don't even think is an unfair bias, because once someone is labeled as a school shooter, even though he didn't specifically shoot someone on purpose, he shot a teacher by mistake. To me, you're still a school shooter, because the moment you walk into a school with a shotgun, obviously I don't want anyone to die, but to me, it doesn't change all that much because you still went to a school with a shotgun. And as much as he might say, like, I wasn't trying to kill anyone, I wanted to be killed, I can see the point being made. I can understand being afraid of killing yourself. Pretty sure a lot of people can empathize, people who have had issues with suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts. I think we understand that part. That being said, there's a point where my bullshit meter just ticks a little too far in one direction, where I'm like, okay, so you go to a school where you allegedly don't want to kill or hurt anyone, so you go with a shotgun and you want people to kill you. So first of all, I need to know, why was your shotgun loaded? If you didn't want to kill anyone and you didn't want to use it and you just wanted them to kill you, you don't need to be shooting for you to get shot at. You can just have the police show up. You don't put your shotgun down when they ask you to. They will shoot you. So why was that loaded? Why was it not just a prop? That's a silly question maybe, but it's like, if we're really going to go with the excuse of this was basically a suicide mission, we have to make shit add up, and for me, it's not. And maybe I'm missing something. You guys can let me know. Maybe I'm missing some massive elephant in the room, but I don't think the elephant is here with us because it does not exist. Regardless, aside from that, I feel some type of way about making the core of your content about something like this. Now, we're going to talk about some other parts of his content, right? But first of all, I think it is somewhat naive to think that people are really going to listen to you in a non-rage way, in the sense that people might watch your TikToks, but I really don't think that the majority of people have reached a point of enough peace towards you, let's call it that, where they're going to take what you say seriously, because realistically, what you're going to be boiled down to is the school shooter who's on TikTok. In fact, I couldn't remember this person's name because I'm horrible with names, and that is what I Googled, the school shooter who's on TikTok. And that's what you are, not because that's the only thing you are. I'm sure there are plenty of other things that make up who you are as a person, but that is the brand you have marketed for yourself. People know you as that. That's also where a level of inauthenticity comes up for me, because a lot of what he says in his videos is, I want to change the system. The system is broken. We need more mental health resources, which I do think we need more mental health resources. I do think there's a lot wrong with the system. That being said, am I going to listen to someone that the system failed and who took action, quote unquote? And when I say took action, I mean showed up to school with a shotgun. Is that the person I'm going to really be taking the advice from? Now, I think having the perspective of criminals is useful. That I am going to say. That being said, I also think the right people need to hear these perspectives. So he mentions that he goes to talk to schools, does these public presentations. That I think is a lot more useful than whatever is going on here on TikTok. Why he's there is already questionable to me, because if you really wanted to turn it into something about learning, wouldn't you pair up with psychologists, therapists, law enforcement? Wouldn't you try to get allies or at least collaborators who are people who have degrees, training, something more than just your lived experience. And that's not to denigrate anyone's lived experiences, because those are valuable to discuss. But after a certain point, how many times can you talk about the shooting before we stop gaining any kind of knowledge from that? And it's also, the trust runs rather low with this person, right? Like I don't trust anything they say, basically, apart from what they were allegedly feeling when they did X, Y, or Z. So not even having a collaborator like a psychologist or a therapist to back up certain things, to explain certain things, I don't know how valuable it is, which then leads me to inauthenticity, because it's like, is this a way to get redemption? I agree with what was said by that other content creator. This to me reads as inauthentic, because to say that you don't want a redemption arc, I think is fake. And there's nothing wrong, mind you, with wanting a redemption arc. Pretty much everyone who fucks up in the smallest or in the largest degrees kind of needs to believe that they can be redeemed to an extent, or else why would you even try, right? It's kind of like doing something and someone telling you, hey, you're never gonna get better at it. If you think you're never gonna get better at it, what would push you and motivate you to keep going? There has to be an inkling of, hey, maybe I will get closer to being forgiven. Maybe I'll get closer to being a good person. And that's why he was even volunteering. I believe he said it was a homeless shelter, right? You have to believe that there's something you can do that you might not call a redemption arc, but that still is, for all purposes, a redemption arc. Let's move on to the whole sword attack thing, because the inauthenticity for me was kind of underlined by that. This video we just saw, he started talking about the sword attack before mentioning he was a school shooter. This might seem nitpicky of me, but if we're gonna talk about a narrative, what better way to start talking about how you are guilty and a criminal than by initially being the victim? I don't think it might necessarily massively change your opinion, but realistically, did he have to say, oh, you probably know me from this sword thing that happened? Like, why are you positioning yourself as victim before you're here to talk about a school shooting that was completely on you? I'm just asking that. I am not necessarily drawing any conclusions. Do I think that's suspicious? Do I think that is in order to appeal to people's pathos? Yes, 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 I believe that. I believe that you're trying to appeal to people's emotions, and I think you're trying to do that via being a victim of something horrible yourself. Moving forward. Okay, so when we talk about what happened with the swords, basically a man with swords attacked him. He has plenty of scars, which I think we'll see in one of the next TikToks. He was attacked by this man with swords. This man has obviously mental health issues of sorts. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that because it's unnecessary.
Am I angry at the man who did this to me? The answer is no. I've learned in my life to be angry at the action and not the actor. It's important to believe that people can be changed, people can be rehabilitated. And the man who did this to me, he's been arrested, charged, and indicted. He's in county jail. He's going to go to prison for a long time. He deserves what everybody deserves, the chance to change his life around. Our prison system is not set up for that. He deserves a place where he can get whatever care he needs as far as mental health or addiction or whatever he's struggling with. Just obviously he has some demons within him, some serious issues that should be worked out, because he, like 95% of the people who go to prison, will be released one day. And I believe he should be released one day. And I believe that he should be given the opportunity, the tools, the resources, the chance to have a normal life one day.
Now in this TikTok, this is really where the inauthenticity for me sunk in. And again, maybe I'm jaded, maybe I'm a bitch. Both of those things are actually just straight up facts, but maybe I'm being particularly bitchy and jaded about this. I do not believe not for a minute do I believe that you got attacked by swords, you almost lost your foot, and I think one of his hands, like the scars on his like foot area and wrists, are insane. Like, they're so deep. This is not just like someone scratched you. They're fucking swords, okay? You almost lost one or more limbs, and I'm supposed to believe that you're not angry at your attacker. Now, I think that after time, you can achieve a level of peace, achieve a level of acceptance, all of that. And we all have different reactions, so maybe I'm too deep in my own reactions. But really, honestly, if I'm in the hospital and I'm immobilized, because for a while he couldn't move his limbs as far as I understand, you have me all the way fucked up if you really think that I'm not gonna be pissed. Not even annoyed, not even frustrated, not even concerned, none of that. Be serious. You might be losing like a vital aspect of how you live your life. Like, you might have to do physical therapy. You might not be able to walk or write again. And I'm not saying that these are death sentences, but they're big deals. You can't act like you wouldn't be mad that you have to readjust your life entirely because someone who has nothing to do with you took things out on you, much like a school shooter would, and you have to deal with the consequences. Like, I'm sorry, I do not believe that. Even if you were motherfucking Teresa, there is no way that I'm believing that. And I also think there is something to be said about being angry, because I feel like being angry is often portrayed as this really negative thing. But when it comes to trauma, in my experience, being angry was actually part of the healing process. And for me, was healthy, because the scariest part of trauma, again, for me, was when I did not care enough about my existence to be angry about what happened. That's when it's in the danger zone for me, because it shows that your care and your concern about your own life is so low. There's nothing to be angry about because you view yourself as nothing. Anger can sometimes help you move through things. So regardless, that also to me says inauthentic. And again, like I said, I am biased against this person. Any which school shooter I am biased against automatically.
What if you walked into your high school with a shotgun? That's the episode title of This Is Actually Happening, the podcast that just had my story, where I shared my childhood, my upbringing, and my unique insights into what led me to commit the shooting that I did. But there is hope, and we can prevent these things from happening. That's what it's all about. So please go and check it out. Let me know what you think.
So then here I just included a little ad he did for a podcast he was on. And see, now I know a lot of people have an issue with the way he's doing this, kind of like acting like a school shooting influencer, which is a crazy thing that just came out of my mouth, a school shooter influencer. But he is kind of acting that way, and I think that that's why this is so uncanny, because we're used to seeing people with fucking makeup palettes and a discount code, and now we have someone being like, 5 signs you might be a school shooter. Like, he didn't make that video, but it's the same kind of vibe. It feels like I'm reading a BuzzFeed list, and it's very unnerving. In this particular moment, it makes more sense to me for him to say, hey, I went on a podcast that discusses these things. That still makes more sense than someone that continuously makes content about their school shooting experience as the shooter. Because after a certain point, I don't know how much more you can say and how much more you can elaborate, again, without having, therapists, doctors, or someone who might give you their perspective. And it's also like, this is monetized. You guys can let me know what you think about that. The whole monetization thing is not something I really want to go super in depth in, because I feel like the majority of people just don't feel like this content should really be out there to a certain extent beyond saying what your experience is. So maybe 2 TikToks and then peace the fuck out. But you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Especially let me know if you think bringing up the sword attack this person endured is kind of like a plot device to shift the lens on him, if that makes sense. Let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.